Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets prepare to take on the Denver Nuggets at the Barclays, but we look back at what was a great sample size in the game against Milwaukee, where players like Ziaire Williams, Noah Clowney, and Nic Claxton told us what could be a young, lengthy core on the defensive end. We dive in next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And Doug, game night, ran a little bit of a test yesterday on the podcast, seeing if people knew that the Nets actually play on Tuesday night, not Wednesday. And many fans were very perceptive when they attacked me over on social media. But we prepare for the Nuggets and for another sample on this young team.
Oh, baby. That's all right. That's all right. It's an early season, getting that schedule worked out, get back into the mix. Fans can be a little more forgiving. A fan, I mean, no one likes to point out a mistake more than a fan just listening. Believe me, that's why no problem there. It's like the ultimate fact checker. And even when you're right, they like to sometimes say you're wrong. So it's even better. So it's wrong if you're right and wrong if you're wrong. So awesome stuff. Look, we got a ton of stuff to talk about today. Nets take on the Nuggets here in Barclays. Jokic coming to town. But one thing that we didn't get into from last game was the absolute defensive menace. That was the three-man crew of Nic Claxton, Ziaire Williams, and Noah Clowney. And if you want reasons to be excited about like some sort of defensive upside or downside for the opposing team when it comes to their offensive abilities, look no further than to what that group did to Damian Lillard, Giannis, and company, because it was just awesome to watch. Both ends of the floor. We're probably going to get a Claxton start tonight. And I don't know if you want to, this is going to be a season of trying to get excited about things, mired in losses. But watching that group play kind of, it was invigorating and also showed that there's like upside to like some of these young guys that the Nets have. And like there's probably a future beyond just this year, which is going to have a lot of losses.
Yeah, it was interesting because a year ago when we got the small sample size of Noah Clowney playing a bit and then Noah Clowney playing with Nic Claxton, we all started to get excited about that because Clowney, especially on the defensive end, has that same athleticism, especially around the basket, has the ability to make some pretty impressive blocks, can certainly be switchable. You can go ahead and put him on different matchups. Okay, great. Then we wanted to see that expand, and you already started to get that sense. But, I thought about this relative to every iteration of this team. And we always talked about in the superstar era when you bring in veterans and they have very specific roles, as opposed to taking a flyer on Ziaire Williams this offseason. You bring him in, and it very much feels like, right, that's the kind of defensive player you need. He's not at the top of your depth chart, but when you bring him in behind other players, the complement that it creates is so exciting to watch on the floor. And you saw it against the Bucks where it was, oh, we need to switch defenses. Typically, even in the small sample of Clowney and Claxton, okay, you can switch. There's two opportunities there. But then you get down the list and you go, yeah, there's still going to be mismatches. You're still going to get out to a wing. Maybe you can take a guy off the dribble. Ziaire Williams now represents an opportunity to go, yeah, big enough, lengthy enough, and certainly quick enough on the defensive end to then make an offense say, what's step 1, 2, 3 of our offensive game plan here? That's the goal of any team to have it, especially at the highest level of championships. And you mentioned there about now develop it, right? Like that's the other exciting part of this is now spend an entire 82-game season seeing how good that three-man core can be and dreaming on pulling that forward into another year when you have real aspirations of winning basketball.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Ziaire Williams might be like the most athletic guy the Nets have had in years. I mean, just watching him play, it jumps off the page. It jumps off the page. Like this sheer athleticism that he has. The Nets haven't had many guys like this that just, again, like jump off. I said jump off the page like a dork. I meant jump off the screen, like people that are actually watch basketball.
It's like when you read a basketball game, Doug, you just love when it jumps off the page.
It's like when I have my book in front of me as I'm staring at watching the game. He might be like, they haven't had many guys who just jumped off the screen and it was like, oh wow, like he can actually move, the fluidity. He has athleticism. I joked about it last game. He was picking up Dame full court, and it was working. Right, like the Nets were running like some like sort of weird press, which never happens in the NBA because point guards and guards are just usually too good. And you just get too tired. Like it just doesn't. And there's like transition stuff, whatever. But the Nets were doing it, and it really gave the Bucks problems. They really couldn't get it into their offensive sets. They were having the wrong guys start actions. A lot of that came from guys like Williams just being, like I said, an absolute menace on the defensive end. And so when you combine that, he already had that in his bag. Then he's playing the 3. Okay. So now you can switch everything. He can get onto guards, because if he's playing with the 3 with Claxton and Clowney, then you're able to really you can trap the hell out of certain guys because they just can't get past your length. You can switch on to just basically everyone. Like I said, he guarded Dame at times. And then you add this one last piece. That we said that was going to be the key for Ziaire Williams, was that he was going to be able to keep defenses honest. Through 3 games, he's shooting 57% from 3. 57%. Is it going to stick? I mean, not at 57%, but all he had to do, we said, to actually make it here was be serviceable from 3. Serviceable, because everything else actually he can do. And at that point, you really have something. I was so excited. This was that stretch where those guys played together really was like invigorating to watch, because they were all so dialed in. And I think it might be an all season long kind of thing.
4 out of 7 for Ziaire Williams over the first 3 games from beyond the arc, and he's been at least 50% in every single game. That's the most important.
Doesn't it sound better when you say 57% and you just ignore the fact that it's only 7 3-pointers? Let's go with, we always want to use numbers that help.
Use bigger number, right? What number jumped off the page at me? It was 57% from beyond the arc for.
He's shooting 50% from 3. What is it? He had 1 for 2.
but this is like, you know what it is too for me, because we talked about this before, and we're going to get into obviously the Nuggets game coming up, and whether or not those type of exciting things that are dumping off the screen can translate when you're taking on the Joker. But it's also the fact that this isn't a knock on Nic Claxton or any other players. There's always been versions of seasons where we go, well, and then if only this player can do the next thing, as opposed to when Williams walked in, we set the template, like you said, has the length, has great defensive value. If he can just start to pull the trigger on perimeter shots and knock a few down, then you have someone you can work with and develop and can see a future for. So to get 3 games into the season and have it be that he's checking all those boxes to go along with what he's doing defensively, it instantly has you look at the season and go, okay, this is that guy that we always talk about. Nets take flyers every offseason. You want one of them to hit. Ziaire Williams is already ready to hit, and all he has to do is continue to carry this forward as we look ahead in this season. There's more about what Ziaire Williams brings and how it complements Clowney and Claxton. We want to get into that here in just one moment as we remind everybody about injuries coming into this game as well, and who will not be available for Brooklyn. We'll do that in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Nothing better than going to a live sporting event. Whether it's the NBA game, you see it in person, whether it's the NHL game, it's getting out there on the ice, a little colder, but that's all right. The action's just flying right in front of you. You want to be able to go to the game. You want to make sure you're getting the best tickets for it, too. There's still baseball going on here in the New York area also.
Is there?
Just there here in Los Angeles, baby. It's the only places that you can maybe continue to be able to see baseball. It's all there for you on Game Time. You're going to get the best deals over at Game Time. You're going to be able to see exactly what you're going to see when you sit down. When you buy the tickets, you're going to make sure you get the best deals out there. They get the curated deals. They got event cancellation policies. Also, right now, you head over to Game Time. There's still time. It's Tuesday morning. Right now, $22 Nuggets at Nets. Go see the Joker in person, and the 3 guys that we're talking about here defensively, starting at $22 over at our friends on Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, previewing coming up here in a little bit, the Denver Nuggets matchup for the second home game for Brooklyn. Obviously, you weren't sure what to make of it when they took on Milwaukee, but now it's full steam ahead against the Nuggets. They better watch out. The thing that I do like moving just a little bit beyond Ziaire Williams and that combination is also the Nic Claxton of it all, because they're also, you talked about it at the top of the show. Sometimes fans, they want to get in on narratives, and it's fun, and it's always in good spirits. But there's still a segment that wants to defend some version of what's working or not working for the team. The Ben Simmons of it all. The other guy, though, Nic Claxton, who's been playing incredibly well in spite of the aggressive flagrant foul early in the season. Like, I never understand why we can't just gravitate towards the guy we just paid $100 million to, and the guy that's in his mid-20s, and the guy that still is still expanding his game in ways and improving himself that can help benefit this team over the long term.
It's so hilarious. The Nets were multiple seasons. We make this joke all the time. The Nets multiple seasons into not having to make hard decisions because they just like get someone injured or like they just rest somebody. And that's going to be the case again here against Denver because Simmons is sitting out for injury management and they're just going to start Claxton. And so you kick the can one more day down the road of like what the actual starting lineup should be and who should be in the starting lineup and whatever. It's so obvious. It should just be Claxton and put Simmons as a 6-man or something like that. Who knows if they're going to actually do it when the rubber hits the road. Someone else will probably get injured. And they won't have to, right? Or someone else will rest and they won't have to make the decision. But go ahead.
No, can I ask you, because so Claxton is injured in the preseason, so he can't play. So when you get to the regular season, maybe we don't know. Maybe they would have started Claxton all along. They go with Ben Simmons as he's ramping up his minutes. Now Ben Simmons gets injured. Do we?
He's not injured, but he's not injured. I think it's just like a planned rest day, just to clarify.
Sorry, you're correct. Yeah, not injured, a planned rest day. Are we 100% certain that it is a planned rest day and not maybe the slow move towards what we ultimately want to have happen with Ben Simmons? Because we talked about it last episode of just, hey, Jordi Fernandez set an expectation. You're not meeting that expectation or even coming close to it. And he seems like he's the kind of coach that would make that shift. Obviously, we won't know maybe for another couple of games here, but I'd like to think the intention was to start Nic Claxton, and it was just him coming off the injury and ramping up that prevented it. But again, as it always hilariously is, we won't know that for at least one more game here with Brooklyn.
Yeah, look, I think the intention was that, and they just were. It's easier to ramp up minutes off the bench because you just automatically just lop off the minutes at the beginning of the first and second half, and so you just don't run the risk of it running anyone over. So and then Claxton, injury managed himself, minutes managed himself when he nearly decapitated Dyson Daniels. So
again, that was a scheduled rest. That was a scheduled rest for Claxton.
He's like, and I'm done with my minutes. Off to the locker room. But I think it was just convenient more than anything else. I don't think that there was a plan. I think the plan is to start Claxton. Now, the problem we've already said is it going to be Claxton plus Simmons, which we know doesn't work. At this point, I would not start them together. I think that Claxton is clearly the better, much better player. It's not, the team is much better when he's on the court, like defensively, really everything else. And this is speaking of low sample sizes. I'm just going to give you a couple quick numbers here. And I'm even going to factor in that, Simmons played against the other team starters and Claxton came in against bench units. All right. They played 66 minutes with Simmons on, Claxton off, 52 minutes with Claxton on, Simmons off. Right.
Yes.
The Ben Simmons 66 minutes, the Nets have a minus 28.8 net rating. So horrible, just getting absolutely crushed. And then the 52 minutes with Claxton on, they have a plus 30 net rating. So it's like it's a nearly 60-point net rating swing between those two guys.
But it's tricky.
Okay,
it's hard
great.
to tell though, Doug.
I'll deal with the objections early here. It's against bench units. Okay, got it. All right. It's against the other team starters. Okay, yeah, I understood. 60 net rating points difference between these two guys. It's obvious. You have to play Claxton. Bring Simmons off the bench. He's going to do what he does, whatever. And I think they're going to. I think they're going to injury manage him here, and they're going to change the starting lineup next game. Like I think it's going to be. I think it's just going to be pretty obvious what happens.
By the way, the in the Milwaukee Bucks game, and it's true in all of these games, by and large, was Claxton coming in against the second unit? Yes, he was also on the court against Giannis and against Dame and against the starters for Milwaukee as well. I mean, like that idea, which I know you don't need it, but it's like the idea of, well, he wasn't in the starting unit, so that means all of his minutes were against bench units. Like let's get it together here. No. All these things overlap throughout the course of 48 minutes, and the idea that he's exclusively playing against second unit is absurd. Other thing I'll throw in from number standpoint, since we started at the top talking about Nic Claxton, Ziaire Williams, and Noah Clowney, how about this? When they're on the floor together, it's 35 minutes. That's a sample size that I can live and die on. 23.94 positive net rating, a 123.94 on offense, 100 on defense. That's just the kind of dream that you can live on. 37.78% in opposing field goal percentage when those guys share the floor. So there are things that you should build on. Am I telling you that the starting unit should include Clowney and Ziaire Williams with Claxton? No, come on, stop it. But it will be nice to see those sample sizes. Just to your point briefly on Simmons, this isn't about the experiment or any of that stuff. It's just about having the best functional units on the team, and hopefully this is the start of that shift. Now, is it a difficult one to do it against the Denver Nuggets when it's the Joker? like this is always where I think the push and pull comes, because anyone is going to struggle against him when it comes to his offensive game. But I will be curious if that 3-man sample that we're talking about, if Jordi Fernandez goes to that to try to create specific stretches of disruption for the Denver Nuggets in a game like this, because as good of a passer as Nikola Jokic is, if you can be longer than most of the lane space, it can throw off that rhythm offensively, even for a player like him. And I bring him up because that's a different player, obviously, than what you get in Giannis and what Giannis's mentality and approach is offensively versus how impactful the Joker can be without actually having to score on a given possession.
Yeah, look, we saw last game, like I said, with that 3-man pairing, or that 3-man trio, whatever, group, is that the reason they got so much done is because they just made the Bucks so uncomfortable, right? They're like, okay, we're just going to make you so uncomfortable, and we can do it. It's going to be for shorter stretches, so we can dial it all the way up. We're going to pick you up as far as we can up court. We're going to make it so that you have to get out of your base set offenses early. Like, you're not going to be able to walk the ball up the court. You're not going to be able to just kind of look around and take scope for what's happening. And we know the Nuggets live and die on that kind of thing, right? They want to slow it down. They want to get you into the half court, and they want to have Jokic just surgically pick you apart, which he does. And he does like better than pretty much anybody that's ever played basketball. And your hope against that is to make things really uncomfortable for him and make it so that you disrupt, like you said, the lanes and the vision that are going to cause you problems. It's hard, right? Like, these guys are the two of the best guys, paired together. It's about as good as it gets between Joker and Murray, especially when you run the pick and roll stuff. And Murray's been really good to start the year. But just in general, I think that we're going to probably see a lot of it. And not having Simmons too, I think a lot of these minutes go to Zaire here. It would be my guess, and to Clowney. I think those Simmons minutes go to Clowney and Zaire. And because remember too, it's not just those guys. Like the Bucks are the Nuggets are ultra long and big too. I mean, they're playing Michael Porter Jr. at the 3 and Aaron Gordon at the 4. It's like these guys are small, and Braun's not exactly small either. So Christian Braun. So I think you'll see a lot of these minutes. I think that they're going to do this disruptive thing again. And I think we kind of see it all season. And I think it's going to work, by the way. I think it's like Williams just is so active on defense, and he's had so many plays that should have been steals that just ended up not being steals because the ball went out of bounds or it tipped off someone wrong. Like, he just causes problems every time someone touches the ball, and if he's in the vicinity.
And it's funny too, because I'll just relate it. There's something about the veterans for the Nets that I want to get to here to close things out in this matchup against the Nuggets, and why Ziaire Williams and Noah Clowney make a lot of sense in most matchups on a night in, night out basis. But it's also funny that Trendon Watford still waiting to come back from the injury. When we saw him last year, same kind of thing of like, hey, athleticism, can run in the open court, can do some things, but it was all geared offensively. And the other side of it was, I don't know, can he do some things defensively? Can he play smart basketball? He's not as long as Ziaire Williams is, but I feel like these guys mirror one another on opposite ends of the court, where the things you got excited about Trendon Watford a year ago and what he could build into are what excite you on the defensive end for Ziaire Williams. And now it's just a question of whether or not it comes to fruition. All right. I hate to do the thing where you say 3 games in, are we already more excited? Probably, because adding the 3-point shooting to Zaire is different than trying to add defensive value, defensive consistency to a player like Trendon Watford. Coming up here in a second, I'll just go a layer deeper on why that's so critical and why it looks so different this year than it did a year ago for Brooklyn. We'll do that in just one moment. All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, wrapping it up, by the way, we'll get into where the spread stands. We'll do the pick 'em. I don't want to get into a thing here, guys. I'm undefeated. I can't be stopped. I'm 3-0 on the season in the host battle. And frankly, if I was putting any real money on these at all, I'd be 0-3. So don't worry, not going to make any bets, and we're going to keep trying to get some wins there. The last thing I mentioned there, just about from last year to this year, I'll know you'll remember this. There were so many games when we came out of it, and I think midway through the season, probably earlier, we took a pause and said, we used to think that the effort and energy was there and it was causing chaos on the defensive end for oppositions, and you're ranging out and you're trying to close out on threes, and it looks really good. It looks like everyone's doing a lot. But then when you watch it a little bit deeper, you realize everyone might just be running around flailing their arms, and there's not a real system in place, and there's not a real structure. This year, obviously, it already feels like 3 games, and then Jordi Fernandez is like, hey, I'm a real basketball coach, and we're gonna run real schemes, and we're gonna have real plans on both ends of the floor. But then beyond that, adding in a player like Ziaire Williams, the length obviously settles it down. And it's not just him, it's everybody. There's clearly a form and function to what you need to do so that it isn't running around the paint, being under the basket, being on the perimeter, trying to get to the corner. There's a better structure that now makes it feel like this is sustainable, as opposed to a year ago where one or two possessions where it looked good felt like a mirage more than a reality.
Yeah, so I do remember exactly talking about this because we actually talked specifically to Lucas Kaplan about it. And he came on the podcast and we discussed just sort of like some of the defensive identity, or such as it were, that the Nets had last season. And it was because what would present itself as aggressiveness or aggression, like on Hedges and Diggs, right? Like when they were trying to get down, into lanes or just help off pick and roll or stuff like that, look like you said it was like more just trying to make up for the fact that they didn't have the right personnel, and then it would kill them, right? And so, and that's what really what ended up being. And we saw that, Bridges might have taken a step back defensively. Cam was not really getting all the way there. Cam Johnson and DFS like weren't totally doing as on-ball guys, right? Like they just had problems. And so this year, it's funny because it is a little bit different. The personnel is a little more suited. Like we're getting more Clowney. Clowney's just a better defensive player than most guys that played it for the Nets last year, right? Already. Like we already know that. Ziaire Williams, even for his 18 minutes a game, is a better defender than just about everyone the Nets had on the team last year. And so even just those slight upgrades or possibly major upgrades are starting to show. Frankly, Simmons is a better defender than most other guys. Like the Simmons problems that we've had this year have really not been for the defensive stuff. He's still a little too foul prone, but he's still aggressive, can still guard every guy in the other team. Basically, his problem's all just like he's allergic to shooting. And so, so even 24 minutes of him is better than most guys the Nets had. So just those kinds of upgrades across the board do present a different defensive profile than they had last year. And that's a good callback by you to remember that we had talked about that, but it was really just, it was a fake kind of thing. It was like a Fugazi kind of just aggressiveness. Yeah. And it was moving, but it wasn't really with purpose. This is like everyone can be trusted to stay on their own guy pretty much right now. Yeah. With enough help to come. And that is important.
It's funny. So just very briefly, things to watch for that makes life easier on Cam Thomas on the defensive end, guys that you don't look at as being defensive stalwarts. Hey, your job's easier if you have guys around you that are executing at a higher level. The other part, you mentioned about Michael Porter Jr., you mentioned about Aaron Gordon. This is why those players like Ziaire Williams, like Noah Clowney, and his growth matter. Because if you think about it again, make this matchup a year ago, it's Dorian Finney-Smith, it's Cam Johnson. Now, I'm not here to pour cold water on them, but they're not as quick. They're not as athletic. They're not as talented on the defensive end, just from an age and athleticism standpoint as those two players. And then even offensively, this is where you need to mix and match these a little bit, because the sample size early on Dorian Finney-Smith has been okay. He's made some decent rebounds. There's been these little flashes of aggressive playmaking around the basket, but mostly he's on there and he's taking his shots, and most of them aren't necessarily going down. Look better against Milwaukee, I thought, than he did in the first two games. And then it's likewise for Cam Johnson. The one other thing I wanted to point out to watch in this game is that Jalen Wilson, after that absolute amazing season opener where it felt like, oh my God, pop the top on this Summer League MVP, like we're about to get a real sample size here, he's been throttled down. And I wondered if it ends up just being the reward for being the Summer League MVP and you get out there and he still looks good, but I think we maybe just recalibrate slightly on his trajectory and just on his growth and development, right? Because he only plays 13 minutes against Orlando. He only plays 14 minutes against Milwaukee, only takes one shot in that game against Milwaukee. And I think matchup-wise, you're going to see some different things throughout the year here. Atlanta, different matchup than Milwaukee, and some of the challenges that would present for a player like him. I'll be curious to see how his minutes run here as we move forward.
Yeah, that's been surprising too. I thought that he was going to see a lot more of the bench again. Like maybe the plan is just to play lots of different combinations, mix and match. They seem to be fine with that so far, which I'm totally great with. Just mix and match all season. Some guys are going to get more opportunity than others. Maybe his minutes ramp up a little bit here with no Simmons also, right? Like as we start to see the breakdown of who's going to actually play. With Simmons out, I could see Jalen Wilson just getting like 20 plus minutes because they just want to go a little more wing heavy. And then they're still, short on guards, but Keon Johnson plus more minutes from Schroeder and Cam Thomas. Maybe that's just the way. So I think that all season long, we're going to be looking at this I think it's just going to be not consistent, and that's fine, right? I don't think that I don't think anyone has to play. I mean, because the guys like Clowney got buried, I think we'd have a problem. But in general, I think we're just going to see a situation where some nights the guys are playing a lot, and some nights there aren't, and sometimes it's hot hand, and sometimes it's not, right? And so,
yeah,
like that's just is going to be what it is. I do think there's like still a set rotation spot for Jalen Wilson in the long term here. He's shown that, but I'm not. You see this for a lot of teams. If you look at every team early in the season, the minutes off the bench really fluctuate. I mean, OKC's starting a new guy at the 2 guard every night, right? And that's a team that has like Alex Caruso coming off the bench. Like they started Isaiah Joe one game, they started Wiggins one game, they started Casey Wallace one game. It's a rotating. So this isn't weird to have different minutes going from different teams. Even the best teams are trying things out to start the year.
And then last note here, Doug so far is perfect on calling Noah Clowney's 15 minutes in the season opener as being the lowest minute total of the year. 16 against Orlando, 21 against Milwaukee. The streak rides on. We'll look for him to play at least.
I'm wondering why I would have bet. I don't even remember saying that. That's so funny. Just talk about the Nets all the time. I would never have remembered that I even made that claim. So nice.
There you go.
It was like 3 days ago.
Or something. By the way, it just happened.
Yeah, this wasn't in 1996. This was 4 days ago or something like that, and just totally blanked. All right, well, sounds good. All right, we are gonna get out. Any other Nuggets thoughts before we get out of here? Yeah.
No, just where's the spread? It's a tough matchup. I think they have good size. Positional size is going to be hard, and I think the Michael Porter Jr., the Aaron Gordons of it, that's going to be a real test on the defensive end because they are both athletic enough. They can shoot from the outside. They can play physical. They can go towards the basket. Like this is going to be a fun game just to see how young players like those 3 that we're talking about, how do they stand up against that test? Because I think this is the best team they're going to face early in the season here, given what it looks like Milwaukee is still trying to figure out for themselves.
So did you take Nuggets or Nets? Plus,
what's the spread?
What did you say? Who did you take?
I said, what's the spread?
Oh, it's 5.5. Sorry. Oh, geez, good. This is good podcasting. It's 5.5. Denver minus 5.5.
Playing the plane like a gentleman. I'm going to take Denver laying the 5.5 in this one.
I'm going Brooklyn. Denver coming off the back. Denver coming out of Toronto. Okay. On the back-to-back. Went into overtime last night. Barely.
These are details I really should have drilled down on.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm taking the Nets here plus 5.5. By the way, that line's insanely low for Denver and the Nets. Because if we had done this before the season and we said, hey, game 4, Nuggets at Nets, what's the spread going to be? And we would have said it was like minus 8.5 or something like that, even in plays. So I think this is a convergence of a few different factors. Nets are looking probably a little better than most people thought they were going to look. And then we also have this contextually, we have the Nuggets on a super short rest with travel. After the overtime game. So I'm going to go Nets plus 5.5. Sneaky chance at the W tonight. Mostly no Simmons. They
would have been minus 8.5.
The Nets will like be 3-0. The Simmons didn't play at all. No, I'm just kidding. with the point, I'm messing around. There would be. All right, we're going to get out of here.
Yeah, fun.
What are we got nets.com. Go check out the 5 stories, 4 stories. Oh man, this is brutal. Now a real pro would start this over and record this last like 4 minutes.
We leave it.
But you know what? We're not built like that. We got nets.com. Grab 4 stories for the NBA, the Nets season. And it's kind of like couches a preview, but it kind of goes for the whole season long. So go to wegotnets.com. It's totally free. Just enter your email.
We're built different. That's what we say here on the podcast. Yesterday is just a memory. Tomorrow is never what it's supposed to be. That was Robert Dylan.
One of the all-time great poets. A movie coming out about him, I think. Right? Yeah.
With like Timothée Chalamet. Yes. Interesting.
Looks pretty good. Man, one of the all-time worst concerts I've ever been to in my life.
One of the all-time great poets, one of the all-time worst singers, I think would be the way to couch.
The worst concert I've ever been. Absolutely terrible. But one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball, yeah.